The survey says Nikola Jokic, best what in the NBA? Y'all, the NBA GM survey is out. The annual celebration of all of the great things about the NBA and what the executives think about the league. Plus, I think there's a player that stood out versus the Boston Celtics that's going to solidify himself in the Denver Nuggets rotation this year. And will there be another Denver Nuggets player that's going to be able next year to make one of the top of the list for the NBA GM surveys in 2025. We're going to talk about all that and more here at Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome into Locked On Nuggets. This is your host, Wiper. This is your team every day. So glad that y'all are here with us today, y'all. This is going to be a great episode. Y'all, today's episode is sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Y'all, let's talk some Denver Nuggets basketball. So the NBA GM survey is out. The NBA GM survey is out, and there are a lot of interesting components to this survey. And I think there's a lot that we got to tap into overall for this Denver Nuggets team. But my first initial takeaway with the survey, y'all, is that, man, the Denver Nuggets are kind of light. They're kind of light, meaning that when I look at this list, there's really only two names mentioned on the Denver Nuggets, and one of them is a player, and the other one is a coach. But let's get straight into it with the NBA GM survey. So, again, what this is a survey, an annual survey of the NBA general managers, and they react to key topics for the 2024-25 season. And basically every year, they'll have GMs from all the different teams will respond to about 50 different questions about the best teams, players, and coaches and all-season moves, and they make their own opinions based on what they see about the game. Now, if you look at the NBA GM survey, I know this is going to break precedent a little here, but I actually want to be able to show you the screen in case some of y'all have not been able to see this at all yet. Let me go ahead and pull this up for you. See, share full screen so y'all can see this. All right. There y'all go. So NBA GM survey. So which team will win the 2025 NBA Finals? They got the Boston Celtics, y'all. 83%. 83% of the NBA GMs think that the Boston Celtics are going to win the NBA Finals this next year, which is really interesting. If you just think about last year, the Denver Nuggets having a 33% chance tied with the Boston Celtics, this is a whopping number. Third is going to be the Dallas Mavericks at 3%. 3%. You got the Celtics at 83. You got the Thunder at 13. And then you got 3%. That is insane. I think that just goes to show you the rankings and how people are looking at the Boston Celtics team. They got really, honestly, y'all, they got four players that are all all-star caliber players or have been to an all-star game. And then they got one, arguably in Derek White. That could have made it this last year, depending on what month you were looking at and watching play. So it makes sense. The Boston Celtics they're spectacular. Western Conference rankings. The Denver Nuggets, they're given the best odds at getting to third in the Western Conference. Now, I think this one's interesting. The Mavericks made the NBA Finals last year, but only 7% tied with the Nuggets. Only 7% believe that they have a chance of making it and winning the Western Conference or being the number one seed. The Nuggets, 27% think that they make second seed, and then 27% think they can make third seed. And so this is where they are right now. Again, it's a very tight race for the top, but I thought that one was interesting. Now, here's where we get into some of the action. So, who will win the 2024-25 Kia MVP Award? Right now, the prohibited favorite is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, according to the NBA general managers. And I'm not going to lie to y'all, I actually think that's legitimate. I think that if any non-Jokic player has the best opportunity, it's going to be Shea, because Shea is going to have a very good team around him. They're going to be loaded. They played last night. Chet Holmgren, Isaiah Hartenstein, J-Dub, Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Kenrich Williams. They're going to have a bunch of dudes, and they might be able to get something done really special this year. And then the other question is, if you're starting an NBA franchise today, can sign any player in the NBA, who would it be? 77% say Victor Wembanyama. Last year, Jokic was number one in this. But I think everybody's seen a year of Victor Wembanyama at this point, and everybody's like, all right, we know he's going to be the guy. We know that he's going to be the guy. And I can't say I'm mad at that. Jokic is 29 years old now. The one that was interesting, Jokic and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, they're tied at 10%. Luka Doncic is third, really fourth, but third on this list. That's interesting. Luka, who many people have predicted to win the MVP, I believe this is the fourth in the last 5 years that Luka Doncic has been expected as the favorite to win MVP coming into the year. But they're saying Victor Wembanyama, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and Nikola Jokic. Those are your top three options if you can sign any player and build around them. Which player forces opposing coaches to make the most adjustments? Luka Doncic got 33%, that leads the NBA. Steph Curry with 30%, and then Nikola Jokic with 23%. I think that one's interesting as well, just accounting for either it's going to be the playmaking on ball creation, for Luka Doncic. Steph Curry is the on-ball, off-ball movement, all the things he does as a three-point shooter. Then Jokic, obviously, with the inverted style of offense. And then Giannis with 7%, and Embiid with 7%. Breakout season, no Nuggets here at all, but J-Dub, Jalen Williams leads with 13%. Best point guard in the NBA. Yeah, Luka Doncic, 37% said him, 30% said Shea Gilgeous. I think this is interesting, though, that a majority of the GM said that Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is the player they will build around over Luka, but Luka somehow the better point guard. That's interesting. Best shooting guard, Anthony Edwards at 33%, Devin Booker with 23%, Shea with 20%. Where's Donovan Mitchell right here? Why is Donovan Mitchell's name not on here? That's fascinating. No Donovan Mitchell. Best small forward, Jason Tatum, 47%. I think it's going to be Tatum, Durant, or LeBron for me. And all three would have a very sizable argument for me. Best power forward, Giannis, 77%. But y'all, best NBA center, which includes two of the last four, the last 4 years, all the MVPs are between Jokic and Embiid. And Jokic, 87% say he's the best center in the league. 93% last year. Embiid, 10%. I don't understand where Victor is coming in. Anthony Davis is better than him. But I think maybe they just didn't count him as that position or something. I don't know why that would be that case. So I think this is really interesting. And the one that I wanted to get to in particular is this one. 87% of the GMs say that Jokic is the best international player in the sport. And what I think is really interesting about this is that if you think about where the Nuggets are currently and where the NBA is, like, NBA is more international than it's ever been, ever. There is so much talent. The way that people are playing are in a situation where, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander representing Canada. You got Victor Wembanyama representing France. You got Joel Embiid representing Cameroon / France / United States, where he lives. You got even just some of the players, Karl Anthony Towns. Like, there's just multiple players. Bam Adebayo, it's obviously an American player, but has strong African roots. Like, the game is so wide and it's so broad and it's so vast. Luka, Slovenia, the NBA is in a really, really great place. And I think for Jokic to, be at the very top of that, it's really interesting. And I think it speaks to just kind of how great he has been, but also how diverse the league is. That's a real conversation you have to have. Who is the player that kind of sits at the top of that board and where we're headed. So Jokic grades out really well here. Later on in the show, We're going to talk through kind of, are there any other Denver Nuggets that can make this list next year? Because so far it's been dominated by Joker. Michael Malone gets mentioned every so often, but we haven't had another Denver Nuggets player on that list, so we'll have to find out who can be the next. Y'all, on the other side, we're going to talk about the Boston Celtics versus Denver Nuggets preseason games. I do think there's a player that stuck out over the course of that matchup that I think is going to be a real big player for them upcoming this year. We're going to talk about all that and more here at Locked On Nuggets. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. We'll be right back for more here on Locked On Nuggets. Y'all, welcome back to Locked On Nuggets. This is your host, Swiper. This is your team every day. Shout out to y'all. Make sure if you're listening to this on the audio side, give us a 5-star review on Apple iTunes. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the video. We're trying to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of next season. Myself, Matt Moore, Ryan Blackburn, trying to make the best Denver Nuggets content possible. So, y'all, the NBA preseason, we're 2 games in so far. We got a chance to see a good little bit of basketball. And I think that if I was to give like a pretty stark opinion, I would say that the Nuggets have looked good with the starters. They look great. I believe the Nuggets won the starter minutes 63-56 in the first game. They played well. When the team is fully put together, even with Christian Brown in the starting lineup, they still look like they might be the best starting 5 in the league. I mean, they're that talented. They play together. They're very big. They're very strong. They're very athletic. They have a lot of things that are going for them that I think is going to help them in the long run to be a very successful team, to be a dominant team. But the player that I thought his game kind of showed the ceiling that he has, and if he can provide a stable floor for the Denver Nuggets, I think there's some special thing they can do. Y'all, that's Julian Strawther. When Julian's on the court, there's just a different kind of play style to him, y'all. And the one I liken him to around the league that I remember and I've thought about most appropriately with Julian Strawther is actually Jordan Poole. And the reason why Jordan sticks out is because Jordan, as much as they had Steph and Clay over the years, like Jordan was such a different type of player because he was such an on-ball scorer. Like his ability to kind of get you heen, pull up 3, transition, pull up in 3, get into the corner, get around you, get to the rim and finish with a lay or with a floater. Julian has a lot of that to his game. And the Nuggets just don't have a player other than Jamal Murray that has the ability to penetrate and get a floater or get a mid-range shot on a drive, and then on the other end have enough of fear attached to him as a 3-point shooter where you have to stay attached so you can get around. Like Russ is going to get to the rim a lot. Russ is going to be really dominant at getting to the rim a lot. Russ is going to be able to create a lot of pressure to the rim for the rest of his teammates, and I think that stuff is going to really aid the team. We already saw that with Dario Saric with the dump off, with Vlatko Čančar with the dump off. We're probably going to see it with Nikola Jokic over the course of the year on dump off for kickouts. We're going to see it with Aaron Gordon for lobs. DeAndre Jordan, if they play minutes together, they're going to be able to rim roll together. And they had a really nice dunk versus the Celtics in the first game. And Russ's gravity to the rim is what's going to give him double team on the way to the basket. Christian Brown, I don't think people respect Christian Brown enough as a 3-point shooter to like continue to attack him. But also, too, I don't think teams are afraid enough to stay that attached to where they're going to close out so hard to the point where they're going to fly by consistently or they're going to get out of placement, like their body position is going to be bad, all that stuff. Julian Strawther is the only player that has enough athleticism and then a 3-point shot with it to be able to drive and convince you that even if he does a hesitation towards the rim, he's going, and then if he tries to fake a pull-up, he can get by you because you're assuming he's going to be able to shoot that shot. I think on the other end too, Peyton Watson is another player that you think could grow into that. I hope he does. Peyton gives me like kind of an old school game though in some ways. Like I think he's going to be able to thrive in transition, thrive in the mid range over the course of time. If he ever becomes a good enough 3-point shooter, then I think he'll definitely add that because he arguably is the best driver on the team. But Julian is the only one right now that can be in the situation where Jamal Murray's on the court, Jokic is on the court, Porter's on the court, Gordon's on the court, or CB's on the court, or Russell Westbrook's on the court, or Flacco Chanchar, or Dario Saric, or whoever. He's one of the only ones where whoever he's on the court with, he's a threat. But because he's not the main option, you're not going to double on him. So if I'm Julian, a lot of what I'm thinking about is identifying the space, identifying what's happening on the court, and then be able to kind of like fill and replace. So if somebody gaps off and somebody's driving or getting to the basket, or Jokic is kind of because of his gravity, everybody's kind of floating to the post area, and Jokic is scanning his shoulder. You're just going to be able to work off of that if you're going to get a back screen from like AG or whoever's at the 4, and then you kind of seep through to the corner. If you can kind of lob over the top and you can get to the top of the key when Jokic is being doubled, or you can cut off a Joker. There's just going to be a lot of stuff he does that I think is really going to aid him. The thing with him is just he is just going to have to be able to hit his shots. I mean, that's really going to be it. Julian in this last game, 17 points, 2 rebounds, and 1 assist. He was 6-12 from the field, 2 of 5 from 3, 3 of 5 from the free throw line. He was a minus 21 in his minutes because if y'all remember, Jokic and Murray were just a minus 2. They didn't play a lot. They only played 19 minutes total in those games. And so the rest of the team had to play without them for a lot of minutes, and they got dog walked because the Celtics were playing Tatum and Brown in the third quarter. They got walked, down by 30 walked. But Julian has a couple of times now, the Pelicans game, the Hawks game, and even a little bit over the stretch, he has just shown there's just a little bit of nasty to his game. And I don't mean nasty as like aggressive nasty, but nasty as in if he gets going, like he just has the ability to, again, to be a ceiling raiser for the rest of the roster. And I think given the fact, I think Christian Brown is going to be a good starter, but I just have a feeling, y'all, it's just going to be so limited sometimes offensively that you're just not going to have a choice. You're going to have to play Julian Strawther. And that concerns me some because Julian's going to have to really develop into a tremendous like defensive player to make that work. And I mean like at least good, not below average, not average, at least good. Just because you're going to have the primary assignment on so many players, but he's just kind of light. Like Christian is very like, he's strong and he's very like firm. And so if you run into him because he's so big, he's staying with you and he's fast. And so he's athletic, all that stuff is helping him. Julian is tall, like 6'7", but he's like just kind of got a little bit of a light build. So I'm concerned with him long-term this season being able to convert his offensive game to I'm going to be able to be enough of a defender on the other end where Jamal Murray doesn't have to take the main assignment. Because again, Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., they have their moments, but they're just not consistently going to be able to lock you down and even stay in front of you sometimes. But that's more so, I think, just because of side-to-side athleticism with Murray. And I think Porter, if he never had his back injury, I think it'd be a completely different discussion what kind of a player he would be. But I just think Julian, man, like Julian's going to be we're going to be so dependent on him, the Nuggets are, because his shooting is going to be so invaluable to this roster. And then on the other end, they're going to need to be able to trust him enough defensively where he can do what he needs to do. And I think the Celtics matchup was a really good matchup. The Nuggets are getting ready to play the Phoenix Suns here in a few days, on Sunday. They're going to play the Thunder after that on the 15th, and they play Minnesota again. And then that's the rest of their preseason. So those are 3 playoff teams. And I think those teams are going to be playing their starters, at least in the first half of those games. And I want to see what Julian continues to do as like a player that is asking and getting an expanded role. But now that I have to trust to be able to lock in defensively, I got to trust you to be able to lock in offensively. Like you need to hit your 3-pointers as well, Julian. And you look at the first game that the Nuggets had, 11 points, 4 of 8. It's not bad. He was a +4. Again, I can deal with that, right? Like That's something that I want to see, especially next to Russ. The next game, like I said, 17 points, 6 of 12 from the field, 2 of 5 from 3. You can live with that. Now imagine Julian Strawther coming off the bench for Christian Braun, 17 points, 6 of 12, 2 of 5 from 3, making game-changing, game-swinging plays, especially offensively. So, yeah. Y'all, on the other side, the NBA GM survey is out for this year, but is there a player on the Denver Nuggets roster that could possibly be able to be one of the players that the executives around the league next year are saying, you know what, that might be a guy? I think there might be a couple. We're going to talk about that and more here on Locked On Nuggets. Y'all, I love events. I love concerts. I went to the Maxwell Jasmine Sullivan concert the other day, and I love finding the best prices, the best tickets, the best views, the best locations all around the U.S. Gametime has new features called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filtered out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Yo, make sure y'all go to Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. We'll be right back more here on Locked On Nuggets. What's going on, y'all? We are back here for our final segment of Locked On Nuggets. This is your host, Swiper. And the NBA GM survey is out. The NBA GM survey is out. And I think when I look at this, what players are going to be a player that the NBA GM, the executives are going to look at and say, I think that's a guy going forward in the future. That's a guy that we can project for greatness. Peyton Watson is probably the dude that I think is going to most easily be able to do that. But why? This year, y'all, I'm not going to lie to you. I think to some degree, I think we are understating how important he is actually going to be to this roster. Because just imagine this. If Peyton Watson takes a leap offensively, and I mean, be able to convert as a three-point shooter, Michael Malone said the goal for him was 35% from three. So that means open threes, let's say he shoots 39% on open threes when he's left open. Okay? We can live with that. It's great. Okay. Now say in transition, he's doing what he needs to do. Cool. Converting at the rim, getting fouls, getting to the free throw line. Half court, hitting mid-range shots, attacking closeouts, playing off a Joker, playing off Jamal. But Peyton Watson, I think by the end of the year, he's going to be the best defender on the roster. Now, Aaron Gordon is going to be the most versatile and important defender because of his size and his length and his versatility. But Peyton Watson continues to grow into his body, a 6'8" wing that has a massive wingspan, that's already one of the best shot blockers in the league at his position, especially, who's a good on-ball defender, who's a very good off-ball defender, help side defender, rotator, passing lanes, all that stuff. This is going to be the crux of the issue for the Nuggets. Calvin Booth's whole strategy, based on the CBA and based on what he believes is best, is acquiring young talent and then developing young talent. Matt Morris talked about this before. The idea behind the Zeke Naji contract was Michael Malone's going to play him, develop him. You have a contract on him that's $8 million a year. It becomes an asset to the team or a tradable asset to the front office. Neither one of those things has happened. Therefore, that's why it's a negative contract right now. And then you get Peyton Watson, you get Christian Braun, you get Julian Strawther. Those three players to make the vision work for how to win championships, and I'm talking about more than one championship, is for them to develop. is for them to turn into bona fide rotational players that are helping you win games at a high level. So the reason why that is so important is because in order to make that vision happen, they have to excel. They have to excel. And so at this juncture, y'all, I'm telling y'all, I think Peyton is going to have to end up being the one. The one. Just on the very nature that he has the most, I think, to work with on both sides of the ball. I think if you're able to come into the league and be the level of defender that he is, that's great. But Peyton Watson, I think, is going to have to be the offensive player that they need him to be in order to make the real championship leap. Again, my concerns with Christian are just about portability and does he have, like, he becomes a really good defender, hopefully an all-league defender. But does he have the offensive upside to be able to make that, like, transition to where, like, what happens? Like, what's the next step? Like, can Christian Brown become what Alex Caruso is right now, which I think is the best on-ball defender in the league? Probably, more than likely. And he's a good spot-up shooter. He's a great connected player, and he's a great vertical spacer. And Alex Caruso is so valuable. Can he be that? Hopefully. Jalen Suggs, I don't think he can be Jalen Suggs. Defensively, maybe. Can he be? That's ideal. So what's his ceiling? Like, who's his archetype? Whereas Peyton Watson, his archetype, I've said this before, it's like Paul George. I don't think he'll offensively ever be Paul George. But can he become Jaden McDaniels? Then we're talking about something. Can he become a version of Jonathan Isaac, something like that? Then we're talking about something. You know, can Peyton Watson develop his game to become like a bona fide, this is a positive player on this team, and he's impacting this team on a possession-by-possession basis, just on the basis of his existence on the court. And I think Julian Strawther is also the other one that has a chance to do that. It's a little bit harder when you're scoring based, just because I think that, like, you have to almost outperform, like, as a scorer to such a degree to where it's like you're dang near like providing all-star value. Similar to Malik Monk. Malik Monk is not a great defender. You know, he'll work. You know, he'll give his best effort. But the reason like Malik got paid is because he is like a tremendous offensive weapon off the bench and even closing games. He's so explosive to the rim. And he's such a good shooter, especially for the type of three-pointers that he takes and then the type of shots that he gets. That's just a player that I think is really kind of helped to accentuate like the kind of scoring value you have to be able to provide off the bench. I think that a player like Julian Strawther can do that, but that means basically your shooting can have to be like next level good. And I think Christian, his offensive game is going to have to round out. And I think Peyton just has so much more to work with because he's so much bigger already. And when you're that talented physically, if you work on the little things and you're able to develop some consistency on the little things, like, and again, you do the little things right, like you're hustling to the ball, you're communicating, you're rotating well, you're finding out where you need to be on offense, you're cutting on offense, you're in the proper corner on the offense, you're spacing the offense correctly, and you're able to be a play finisher because you're converting three-pointers and at the rim, and you're converting in transition. That stuff is like, you could do this literally 8 months from now, and the whole team is different because you're such a dynamic defender. And I think that is like the next kind of iteration of the Nuggets. That's the next iteration of like the NBA GMs looking at the Nuggets and saying, damn, we were just too low on them. Because they already got Jamal Murray, who I think can play at an all-star level. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does again. Like, I think people just need to get, like, Jamal, I think, has a bad taste in people's mouth because of the Olympics and all that stuff. But I think Jamal, like, if he's averaging 22, 4, and 6 again on 48, 42, 90, then, you know, this whole thing is cooked again, right? Because, like, he ups the three-point volume. He's averaging 23 points a game, and then it's cooked. Like, you know, now it's like, all right, you know, he's doing what he needs to do. You got Aaron Gordon, who I think is already well-loved around the league. People really appreciate what he does. I think, obviously, Michael Porter Jr., one of the best shooters in the league. You know, maybe he continues to develop a game as a driver and all that, the healthier he gets and the further away he gets from his back injuries and all that stuff. Then obviously you got Jokic, who's the best player in the league. But the thing is, if Peyton is able to slot in as like that next core Nugget, next core player, like the wing player that the Nuggets need, like your Jonathan Kuminga, Jaden McDaniels. That's the player I think that can do it. But y'all, let me know what y'all think in the comment section. What do you think about the NBA GM survey? What do you think about Julian Strawther and his performance versus the Boston Celtics in 2 games? What do you expect from him this season? And if there's a player that's like up next on the Denver Nuggets roster, who do you think it might be? Y'all, this is your boy Swiper, Locked On Nuggets. I see y'all on the other side.